Good morning, manifestors near and far. This is the final interview in our interview portion of the Dream We All Share series. This will conclude our series. I sat down with Courtney, Armstrong, and Eric Schubert from Camp Evergreen, and if they got a story to tell this morning. It's going to challenge us to be radically generous in the face of risk instead of circling our wagons. I can hardly wait to share that with you. And by the way, you should also know that next week I'm getting my preach on. It is Easter weekend, and so I can hardly wait to share the message God's placed on my heart for that. And we have an in-person gathering you're going to want to pre-register for, where we'll be celebrating another baptism. Yes, so cool. So be sure you pre-register for that if you're local, and if not, we will see you online. Have an amazing morning. Well, I'm really excited to have you guys with us tonight. We're doing this interview tonight. You're probably watching at a different time than tonight, everybody. But reason I've got these two on, I'm going to let them introduce themselves, is that they've gone through quite the year, just like all of us have, 2020. But they are connected to Camp Evergreen in various ways. You'll hear how. And they've gone through a year. And when I heard what God had done through and in them and among them and in spite of them, I thought, man, this story has to get told. So maybe we should just start by introducing you guys. Just maybe Courtney, just who are you and what's your role at camp? Why do you do this?
My name's Courtney Armstrong, and I am now the executive director at Camp Evergreen. I didn't start last year as the executive director, and this last summer, so summer 2020, would have been my 20th summer at Evergreen. 15th, it's going on 16th year full time. So I've been at Evergreen for quite a long time. I do this because I just like camp ministry is one of the best, like I just love it. I love the opportunities we have to share the gospel with kids in the summer, but I love that it is a place, a ministry that people not familiar with the church or not comfortable with the church can come to and are comfortable with coming to. Not very many churches can say that non-Christians in public schools and things like that are excited to come to a faith-based organization. So that's one of the big things that keeps me around.
Yeah, apparently. That's awesome. And what about you?
My name's Eric Schubert, and I am currently the chair of the board of directors at Camp Evergreen. And yeah. My story at camp is I went there since I was wee. I was there when I was a kid. My family's church was connected to it, and so I went there as a kid to family camp. And then when I was about 10 or 11, I started going there as a camper, and my only dream was to be a camp counselor there, and I got to live that dream and become a camp counselor. And then later on, I got to train people to become camp counselors or cabin leaders. And then I became a youth leader at a number of churches and always brought my kids to Camp Evergreen. And then I became a teacher and brought my students to Camp Evergreen. And then it just kind of continued. And then in 2016, I was asked to join the board of directors at Camp Evergreen. So it is a place that is near and dear to my heart. And I have just really, really loved to see the growth that happens in leaders at Camp Evergreen and to see how lives are changed and how kids can go from being introduced to the gospel to the first time to becoming cabin leaders and then mentoring new cabin leaders, and just the kind of the generational growth that happens at Camp Evergreen as people hear the gospel and share the gospel and disciple new leaders. So I'm privileged to be part of that.
There's got to be something in the water at Camp Evergreen. You guys just can't escape, or an elastic band, or invisible bungees, or something. I don't know, or Jesus. Maybe that's give him credit. Hey, Courtney, can you just because you're the one kind of on the ground there, let's just start in January 2020. Give me 1 minute, just what's going, because nothing's really hit the fan yet, right? It's like,
no.
What are you doing in January? What are you looking forward to? What does it look like?
Yeah, so 1 year ago, this last week, actually, we would have opened registrations for summer camp. It's been gaining momentum the last couple of years. We've been full, but even last January, we almost doubled our first day registration. So it was like almost 200 registrations in one day. By the time we finished January, we were still about 180 registrations ahead. So it was looking like we are 1,200 campers coming in this summer. I was planning, I was just prepping to go on a missions trip to Bolivia, which I left on in February. We actually were making jokes about how the most dangerous part of our trip was going to be the American airports, which is where we could possibly get corona. And it was like this coronavirus joke that we were kind of laughing about. But so that was January. Really just pouring into planning for summer. T-shirts were designed, all of that.
So then, like, February rolls around, or maybe late February, was it early March kind of thing, and stuff starts to ramp up, right? This thing hits the news. I remember watching a basketball game, and they were about to come on. I can't remember who was playing, and they canceled the game. Like the stadium's full or the arena's full, shut it down, everybody out. But like, so what's happening? Like, when did you hear, when was it you went, oh, I think this might affect our camp?
Well, it actually had nothing to do with COVID. Bob Croker, who was our previous executive director, announced his resignation to, Eric heard before us, but announced his resignation the day before I left for Bolivia. And so that was mid-February. And then when I got back at the end of February, he had just left on a 5-week cruise, which is when Corona hit. And he just about got stuck on a cruise ship for several months.
Wow.
But, so I would say, so Bob was out of the country on a cruise ship, and it was the first week of March when they had just announced the global pandemic, and the phone just started ringing, and first the Scouts Group of Canada canceled all their programs for the rest of the year. Girl Guides were right after that. And then from there, Eric is a teacher, and so he was learning and passing on information probably every other day to me in what was going on with the public school and the extra measures and restrictions that had started there.
So what are you thinking at this point, Mr. Chair of the Board, as you're watching this unfold?
Well, I was already knew we were in for a different summer when Bob resigned. He had been there for quite some time, almost, I think it was eight years or so, and we were already living in a place where we were like, okay, this is going to be a different summer. We're going to need to do leadership, but we thought, okay, we'll get through a summer, and then things will get back to normal, and then. The next wave was, okay, now coronavirus hit and Bob was gone. And so Courtney was just by nature taking things on because she was the one sitting in the chair at camp. And so we were in constant communication, and I was saying, this is what's happening at schools. And, it's not looking good. Like, field trips are canceled until this date, and then till this date, and then till this date. And so we kind of saw it coming a little bit there, and it was, okay, now we have to kind of change gears. Like, it's looking more and more like camp is not going to run the way it's always run.
Right.
Yeah.
And then what?
So we basically saw our spring schedule, which is usually from mid-April to the end of June. No days without groups on site. We run a couple thousand people through our site then. So that schedule completely cleared. 0 people coming in the spring, which is about $200,000 worth of revenue for us.
I was going to ask.
So fairly significant. And it was March, it was mid-March, and we were like, we just can't do this. Like we can't sit here, we have to do something. And one of our camps that we have pretty good relationships with, Southern Alberta Bible Camp, had launched a meal program, and we were like, hey, we think this is something that we can do. So we rallied the troops, got the menus together, launched it by the end of March. Yeah. And that just took off. And it was really, really encouraging. But 2 weeks in, Bob was still around at this point. He was just about to leave camp, and Bob and I just looked at each other and said, like, there's something more we can do. We don't just have to sell meals. I think there's this chance that we have to actually serve people. And so we just got a hold of the local ministerial with the churches and started phoning people and seeing where the need was. And once we sold a certain amount of meals, we just said, we're going to top up by 15 meals. And so that...
What does that mean, top up by 15?
So once we... that's a long time ago. It was once we hit 30 meals sold, like 30 meal packages sold, we gave 15 meal packages away. That's like, wow. So we basically said, like, this is our max number is, at that point it was 45 meal packages. Yeah. And so we just said, like, if we sell 30, makes us this much, we're going to give 15 meal packages away. And so we started working with the Calgary Pregnancy Center and Next Step Ministries that operates out of Calgary. And most of the meals were going there. Cliff Weeb from Dalhousie was working with the Pregnancy Center and making sure that meals were needed in Strathmore or Cochrane or Airdrie. He was coordinating the meals around the Calgary area. So that was really awesome. And then there was a business, Eagle Builders out of Blackfalds, gave us $6,000 to give meals to the Red Deer Pregnancy Care Center. Okay, and so...
Can I just interrupt for...
Yeah.
Your summer camp, right?
Yeah.
just checking. So, So again, Eric, I've got to press pause here. Chair of the board, beautiful idea. Hey, we can make some money. Let's sell some meals. And then they run off on this generosity mission. Like, how did this happen? Like, you just kind of went, and then we did this and this and this, but like, that's phenomenal. So I just need to pause and just say, that's not normal. And when you're in you just said $200,000 of revenue. And so let's start giving stuff away. Like, can you please explain to us, like, what happened around that board? I know that some board meetings you can't say exactly, but like, what happened? What was the process like where you went, we've got to do this? Can you explain that?
You know, I think from a board level, it was really just, we had heard about the idea that Courtney had and had heard from Southern Alberta Bible Camp, and we said, that sounds really cool. It'll keep our staff busy, and we want them to be working because, I mean, there's no guest groups. What they normally do, they're not doing. So it was, you know, how can we have them? First of all, let's just keep them busy, and if we can make some money out of it, great. But you know, let's start there. And it just kind of grew from there. And then, you know, we were hearing that people were not just buying the meals for themselves, but they were taking those meals and giving them to other people in their church communities, in their families, people that, you know, needed it. And it's like, hey, you know what? Like, people are using these meals to bless people. How do we grow that? And let's forget about the bottom line. Like, if we make some revenue from it, great. But at least if we can do ministry still, which is what camp's all about, then let's do ministry and let's see what we can do with it. So, but really it was Courtney and the staff doing it, and us hearing about it and saying, yeah, keep going.
Right. But you're faced with this, like, depending on what happens next in summer, and now we know what happened in summer, right? You're faced with, like, this is about your survival. So I just got to push, you make it sound so like, oh, well, of course. But like, I think you said something really important. You said, this is why we exist. Like, I think that's something that I really want to affirm. Like, you don't exist actually to run a particular kind of program, right? Like, you exist to serve and to help people get to know Jesus and to meet needs. And so, like, we've been using the word, and we're getting nauseated by it, right? Pivoting. This is not just pivoting, though. This is like, I really want to, I need to highlight that, because that's actually, I think a lot of people in your position might have, I think there are probably camps that went, let's just close down for a while, or and I'm not saying that they did the wrong thing. It's a really courageous thing you guys did, where you didn't go, we have to survive. You kind of went, well, be nice to survive, but we have to keep serving because that's who we are. Is that accurate? Or,
and I think a lot of camps did shut down, and we kind of thought we can either shut down and be at zero, or we can try to do something and be at zero. And it's kind of like we can jump out, we can take a risk, we can have faith, and we might still end up in the same position. We might still have to shut down because of no revenue and not making any money, or we could sit and do nothing and have to shut down potentially. And so, from that perspective, we kind of had to take a look and say, okay, we got to leap in and either do something or sit back and watch something happen to us. And it's, how do we participate? How do we focus on what we can do rather than what we're not able to do anymore? And that was a big shift. I think that was a real challenge in this COVID season. Is initially all of us were focused on we can't do.
Right.
So we had to kind of flip our focus, and Courtney and her staff did a great job of that. Is what can we do in this season? And it's not the same, but what can we do? And how can we still try to do our mission, even though it's way, way, way different than what it would be?
Yeah, I think, so at the end of April, we made the really hard decision to cancel camps at that point. We were probably only one of 3 camps that pulled the plug that early. Most camps hung on until June, but we just felt like if we had any hope to run something in the summer, we needed to say, we just needed to commit to something. And it was really hard, especially when you're like one of the first ones out of the gate to make a decision like that. You're like, man, you don't want to be the first person to do anything, really, unless it's like going to the moon. But even then, it's kind of like, is this really a good idea? So we had decided that, and I mean, whether this is the right thing or not, temporary layoff notices were given to all of the staff at that same week. Because at that point, when you're canceling summer camp, that is an extra $300,000 to $400,000 that you're. I
got people back there talking.
Okay, I was like, did I say something wrong?
No.
Yeah, so that's $300,000 to $400,000 that you're now committing to refund to everyone. And so just getting our office staff ready to start processing those refunds. And at the same time, you're saying we are going to refund you. You're asking people to like consider donating part of their registration fees to help us. And a lot of people did. And that was like the first kind of like show of generosity. And some people only donated what they could.
Sure.
Some people donated their entire fees. Like it was just really, really overwhelming to see that generosity start coming back. So when we announced to our seasonal staff that we would not be running summer camp, it was the first day, should have been the first day of our spring staff training. It was really hard. We've never not had kids at camp in the summer. and to sit there and tell our international staff, like our Germans, who like this was the entire reason why they came to Canada for a year, was to work in summer camp, that they would not be experiencing it, and potentially like nothing. And I just really felt this battle cry rising up in me, and I was laughing when I said that. I'm like, because I feel like, you know, William Wallace and like, follow me. But what I did was I read the parable of the master with his servants when he gave them each a different amount of talents. And one of the servants went and buried his what he was given, and one of the servants went and multiplied what he had. And I just said, like, I think like we cannot go quietly into the night. We have a job to do. We cannot we have to do something, and we need to stick together, and we need to keep doing Evergreen to Go, and we will find a way to move forward. And from there, it was focusing on Evergreen to Go, which wasn't always fun because all you're doing is food service. And it was it was a constant trying to reorient ourselves to, okay, this isn't our normal mission, but this is a mission.
Yes.
And then just like planning, what can we do? What does it look like? And then just waiting to see what the lockdown and the restrictions would allow us.
Yeah.
Like what door would open.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, and the cool thing about the Evergreen to Go with all the deliveries that had to be made and all the conversations and all the people that you could chat to and pray about camp with and just share what's going on. I don't know if there's ever been a more personal way that camp staff has been able to connect with people in their communities or near their communities. And it was just dropping off meals, but it was just a weekly or bi-weekly kind of connection with a lot of the people that support camp, that have been to camp, that are praying for camp. And that was a really cool opportunity that came out of it.
Yeah.
And Shauna and I actually experienced two other things that you guys were doing too, right? So the Wholehearted Camping, like opening for campsites, and then we're part of, I can't remember what it was called, but some kind of scavenger hunt.
It was like a Fun in the Sun run. Yeah, there was still a lockdown in place, but we basically did like this scavenger hunt, Amazing Race style thing that we. It was free. I mean, families paid for the ice cream that we served them, but we were just looking for ways to like connect.
Yeah, that's awesome. And we really enjoyed just coming out for a night and doing the camping thing. We actually ran into a couple there as Shauna went off for her trail ride. That it was really cool because we didn't know who's going to be there. And this couple had no church background at all, but they were like, this is the coolest place. Like, so here they are on site. They never would have, like, if you hadn't like gone to plan B or C or D, right? So that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. We had 1,600 people come through the camp in July and August. And 60% of those people had never either heard of us or had never been on site before. So if you even think like we normally only have 1,200 kids, more people came through Evergreen this summer and stayed at Evergreen than in a normal summer.
Wow. And by the way, those of you who are wondering, that was distance camping. So it wasn't 1,600 at a time. So
no.
There's 480 acres. There's lots of space to distance.
So all of this is fine and good, Eric. Awesome. Good job. Ministry opportunities, keeping your staff busy, interacting with the community, connections, all that stuff. But as fall rolls on, you guys are way behind, right? Financially, like, so now the fruit of that decision to be generous is now, it's like crunch time, right? As the year end is coming. What's going on there? What are you guys thinking?
Well, I think from a board level, the big thing that we know is that camp is a very seasonal way that it works, right? We've got high seasons in in fall when the seasons are warm, we've got high seasons in spring, and we've got summer is big, right? And that's, we, with the guest groups in early fall and in spring, that revenue kind of makes us able to run summer and then gets us through the winter. When we look at winter months as it gets colder, there's very few groups in a good year that normally book.
Right.
And it's a tough season to get through. And one of the things we've been working on as a board is, what do we do in the winter? How do we, make some more revenue so we can be a little bit more sustainable and less of the up and down flow? And then we look on COVID laying on top of that, and it's, we had camping in the summer. That's great. People came out, they had a great time. These families that we never would have reached before were out there. That's amazing. But now we're looking at fall. We don't have a full-time executive director in place yet. Courtney has been filling in admirably, but we hadn't officially tied anything up yet. And we were looking at the fall saying, well, we're not even going to have our regular revenue in fall, and then winter, we're not going to have anything either. Like, how are we even going to pay the lights? Like, we were looking at utility bills, and we're saying, okay, like how much can we shut this place down? How minimal could we make it so that we could just pay the bills and not have to close down camp? And so that's what's facing the board. We're saying, what do we do here? That's what's facing the staff. What do we do? It's looking pretty bleak, looking at a fall with absolutely no groups coming and no revenue to ride into the winter.
And so you decided, what happened? What was?
So we had been, like, we basically knew that we needed to run a fundraiser in the fall, because we just, there was just no way that we would be able to get through the winter months. And like this whole time, as bad as like losing the revenue in 2020 was, knowing that summer camp or even like 2021 was just not going to look the same. Groups weren't just going to be able to come back. We're estimating that school groups, it'll be 8-12 more months before any of that will return to us. And so we were like, how are we going to be financially ready for summer in 2021? And so just knowing that we needed to run a fundraiser, and knowing that it can't be an on-site event, it can't be any fundraiser we've ever run before. Right. And so we got it in our minds that it would be really fun to do like one of those Miracle Channel telethons I had in my mind, I was like picturing these red like rotary dial phones and people on tiered seating, and like someone with the Bob Barker little mic and interviewing. Anyways, obviously not all dreams come true, but so we started planning this. We started with 12 hours, but we ended up with an 8-hour live stream of old camp videos and pictures and some live stuff. The program team and the staff at camp really took that over. I had no part in it. There was a comment at some point that everyone was really glad that the amount of money raised was not going to be dependent on the live stream. But they killed it. The live stream was just so much. It was amazing. I think in large part the engagement that we experienced was because of the amount of work that they put in.
Sure. So what happened? Tell us the story.
Yeah. Okay. So we started planning for this. We had a couple of little gimmicks. John Taves, who is one of our program directors, he has this big, magnificent beard, huge giant beard. Like when he brushes it out, it's like this big. And he volunteered. We asked him, and he volunteered to shave it or save it. And so that was one of the gimmicks that we started with. Sure, and so people could donate to do one or the other. And nothing was happening to it 10 days before the event. I talked to the board. I pleaded with them to start making phone calls to have people donate. And that again was a really key part. But there was like no money coming in. And so I donated a chunk of money towards Shave It. I don't actually want him to shave it, but I figured that there'd be more people wanting to save it. So I tried to play the devil's advocate a bit, and that may have caused some conflict. But so just to get it going, and like days go by, and we're like, we had set the goal for $80,000. Camp has never raised more than $40,000 in one fundraiser. So that was always like in your back of your mind, like, what are we capable? What's realistic? But $80,000 was kind of like what I was thinking, you know, if we're going to keep the lights on, if we're going to have any hope to run something, that's the base amount. 3 days out, $10,000. Like, and I was just like, what was I thinking? It was so dumb that like, we're never going to be able to do this. I pick up the mail that day, and I open up the mail, and there's like literally $30,000 in checks sitting, and some of it's for Reaching Higher, like our building campaign, but the majority of it was towards the Fall Fundraiser, which almost got us like halfway there in like one moment. And I was just like, I could just hear God saying like, why do you doubt? Like, I am going to do this. And so we went into the fundraiser with just about 50% done. And we gathered as a staff, and we're praying before we started the day. And I prayed Ephesians 3:20 over the day, just that God would just do immeasurably more than we could ask or imagine. And we just gave it to him, and we asked God to open doors and open hearts, and we started. And within an hour, we were at $56,000. By 11 o'clock, we were at $75,000. And before lunch, we had hit our goal. And I was just like, I mean, when we hit the goal, I was like, I was crying, but it was the campers calling in with their allowance. It was little kids calling in, giving their birthday money. It was hearing families that were watching the whole live stream dressed in camp gear. It was watching an alumni in the YouTube chat, connecting in like for the first time in years. And it was just amazing. And then we got to the afternoon, and our other staff host was Josh, made some flippant joke that he would shave his beard if we hit $120,000, which he genuinely thought was a safe bet. He made that comment at about like $95,000, which even as I talk about it right now, like those seem like alien numbers to be talking about actually physically being donated. And I just like, we had a tree that was like our thermometer, and one of the staff members, her job went from monitoring the Save It or Shave It donations to like madly cutting out little mini trees that represented $1,000 each. And she couldn't keep up because so much money was coming in. And so we hit $120,000, and they stopped updating me as the day was going on. And then when I went to give my closing remarks, I hadn't seen the total. And so when they flipped, like I was thinking like we were like 125, 127, which is still like amazing. They flipped it over and we were at 138, like $138,000. And I was just like, I could never have imagined. It's exactly what we prayed. Exactly what we prayed. And again, I just had this like, why do we doubt? Why?
Yeah.
So good.
Oh, that's incredible. I love it. Eric, your thoughts on some of that?
You know, I was gonna come for the afternoon to help make some phone calls and just kind of do the final push to help us reach our goal. And in between when I left and when I got there, they had already been over 100,000, and I was blown away. Like, you got to be kidding me! And then just seeing how everyone was excited by seeing what God was doing in that moment, and was feverishly on the phone. These people were phoning and phoning and phoning and phoning and phoning, and I think one of the things sometimes we don't do is we don't ask, right? And having the humility to just ask people and trusting that that God's going to do something in it and God will work in their hearts. And honestly, the phone calls I made, I didn't have to do any convincing, selling at all. It was just, hey, it's Eric from Camp Evergreen. This is what we're doing. They're like, we'll send you some money. And some people were saying, like, we sent something already, but like we can't, it's not much. But I think it was a lot of those little gifts along the way, everyone kind of giving what they can. You think about the parable of the widow giving her pennies, right? Like giving her little bit. And I think we saw so much of that generosity of heart. And it was all those little gifts that made this massive difference to be able to keep camp thriving and keep camp being able to do what it wants to do in the future and continue sharing about God's goodness with people. I think for me, when we had to shut down camp, it was like, God, like, this is, you want us to share the gospel. Why would you make it hard for us to do that this summer? Why would you not want us to be able to share? Right. And then to come around to this and see how this is one of those tales that we can tell people. Our theme versus camp is from Psalm 78, where it's, we will tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord. And this is one of those chapters in the story that we get to tell people is like, remember 2020. It's not going to be, campus shut down. It's remember 2020 in 8 hours. This is how much money God was able to come up with through people's generosity and through their hearts and through the work doing in people's hearts in a season when people really should be holding on to their finances. And, where that's how a lot of people are feeling. They flip that around and they show generosity to camp.
Well, you guys led the way, right? And what you were just telling me, this story, what it reminds me of is if you try to save your life, you'll lose it, right? But if you lose your life for me, Jesus says, and my sake, my kingdom, you'll find it, right? And so now you're in this position where ownership of camp has never been so broad or deep, probably either. Like, right? And what will that do in the future? And like we don't know the future in terms of what's going to happen with society and all of that stuff, but that nothing can take away from this story that God invited you into. And you guys could have missed it. Could have just played it safe and none of this would have happened. Like, that is mind-boggling to me, right? So thank you so very much for telling this story. I just know people's minds are going to be, when they watch this, are going to be churning, going, how can I take risks? How can I actually, even just the generosity piece, maybe I shouldn't just be holding on to my stuff, for the rainy day. Maybe I should, just see what God does with my generosity. So thank you so much. You guys are awesome. Thanks for taking the time to tell this story. And I hope and pray that just thousands of people watch this and are encouraged by what God has done. The noteworthy deeds of the Lord. Absolutely. So thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Brad.
Wow. Lots to think about. Lots of challenges, right? How many times this year have we all felt the temptation to circle our wagons and protect what we have and not take risks, not to trust God, more to trust in what we can secure for ourselves. And yet as we give our lives away, we find them in Christ. I want to challenge you to take this story and say, Jesus, what are you saying to me and my family, our family, in this season? How are you calling me to take what you've given me and share it with those in need, knowing that God will be faithful and to see what God will do with that? Lord Jesus, thank you for today. Thank you that we get to do this here online and in person. Father, in Jesus' name, would you infuse us with a spirit of generosity today so that we can follow you, so that we can love the world well like you did. Jesus, you laid your life down for this broken world. So Father, help us to follow you in your footsteps, to lay our lives down, our stuff down, our possessions down, our time down, even our sense of safety down at times when people are in need. In Jesus' name, amen. Have an amazing day.